courses in geography. Shay holds both a BS and MS in geography from Arizona State. She is passionate about fostering collaboration, building strong professional relationships, and using geospatial technology to solve complex challenges. Shay, welcome to the stage. We're happy to have you here at MAPPS, and I hope everybody enjoys this wonderful panel we put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So this presentation is actually a discussion with, I'll have 3 panelists, but then I would also like to hear from people in the audience. So my email will be on the last slide if you want to email me comments or write them on these pieces of paper or chime in. Mike and the other gentlemen will be busy when it comes time, just running mics around. It'll be exciting. But bridging the divide, I have been a part of AGIC, a statewide GIS group, for over 20 years. I've been really active in it. I've been in my role as the Deputy State Cartographer for about a year and a half now. And I am frustrated. I am frustrated because GIS in Arizona, and I've noticed this to a lesser degree at NISGIC, but GIS in Arizona is, the people who do it are fantastic. We know each other. We're like a big family. Our annual GIS conferences is just probably like you guys, a nice family reunion. We get together, we chat, we catch up. We are trying to make the world a better place through the work we do. But we're fairly siloed. What was it? Silos of excellence, is that what I heard one time before? Cylinders of excellence. So from a USDOT friend of mine. So we work, next slide please. We work to, he'll be there in 1 second. We work to do amazing things for the people within the state of Arizona. But so do engineers. So do surveyors, so do hydrologists, and rarely do we talk to them outside. If I work for a city, I'm in public works, maybe I'm chatting with my engineers. Otherwise, the GIS people do their GIS thing, and the engineers do their engineer thing, and the surveyors. And I think we're losing out on a lot of opportunities. I think that what I want to get from this group is, how do you help me to help you? No, but how do we get better at working together so that we're letting people know? Did you know that this foundational data is used for economic development, and when the floods hit Globe 6 months ago, and when you needed to do your planning and all of these things? And why am I fighting for $500,000 there and you're fighting for $500,000 there, and you put 40,000 in over here? Are we reinventing the wheel? Could we, whether it's money or getting our city councils or our legislators to listen to us, or us meeting a couple times a year and saying, oh, you're all working in the Pinal County area, why don't we pool our resources and go further? Why don't we go together on these USGS initiatives to get imagery or to get LiDAR data or the derivatives of that? Can we work together to do that better? That's why I'm here. I want to listen to you guys. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear the challenges, and then I want to hear from people who will help me just climb over those challenges and get it done. So that's the central question. I'm going to give a couple quick, my introduction and background. We'll bring up 3 panelists, and again, then it's 10 guiding questions where I really do want audience participation, as well as the panelists, and we'll see what we can fit in by 11:45. So next slide, please. About me, I've already mentioned it. I've been active in GIS for over 20 years at the state level through the Arizona Geographic Information Council. So within Arizona, how many of you are live in the state of Arizona? Great. How many of you are aware of a Geographic Information Officer or a GIS Council within the state in which you live? Oh, okay. Well, most states have a geographic information officer. It's the person in charge of GIS for the state. In the state of Arizona, the person who coordinates GIS, the position officially goes to the state cartographer's office, and my boss, the commissioner of the state land department by name, is the state cartographer. She doesn't know GIS, she doesn't know mapping, she is a commissioner of the land department. It's like the equivalent, someone told me, the BLM for the state of Arizona. We have a lot of state trust land, and our job is to manage that well and make sure that the proceeds go to the citizens of Arizona. So she assigns it to the deputy state cartographer, so my job is, among other things, to coordinate GIS in the state of Arizona. One of the ways we do that is we have a Geographic Information Council. Most states have these. And there are 35 members appointed by the governor of Arizona, state, federal, one private entity, 6 municipalities, because you know, all of our data doesn't originate with the municipality. Why would we think about that? So my boss is not in the room right now, and hopefully no one's videotaping. So we meet quarterly, we have committees, and we talk about how can we improve infrastructure and data in the state of Arizona for GIS to make it more usable for all the citizens of Arizona. A lot of the work is done by volunteers, so we have a data committee where, again, it's all volunteers discussing data and how do we improve it. We're putting together an imagery program to say, how do we get funded, consistent, sustainable imagery for the state of Arizona? And then quite a few things. We have an annual conference. And by statute, AGIC is in state statutes, and its primary goal is information exchange, cooperation, standardization in the state of Arizona. Next slide. We do this, a major part of what AGIC and the state land department does is we put together a clearinghouse of data. Again, most states have a centralized data clearinghouse. Most counties have a data clearinghouse. Most cities, the larger ones, have data clearinghouses. But we built one for Arizona that shares the critical data, allows people to collaborate in real time, streamlines operations. It's free of charge to 90% of the users, 5 or 10% who are pretty much using it for their internal programs. ADOT does a lot of work on it. They might pay into it. But most people, they can go, they can search the data. In fact, would you pop to AZGeo, the internet site? So I would like to say that this has been around for a little while, but Arizona was one of the first adopters of the Esri Hub technology, and we were very cutting edge 5 years ago. And now we're really needing to kind of up it a little bit. So if you look at this and it kind of looks like maybe they've been tagging some things on over 5 years, that's because maybe we've been tagging things on for over 5 years, and we're going to be updating it soon. But if you go to the data menu, that is, anyone can go here. You don't have to log in, and I think if you scroll down, we're all used to seeing these. What type of data do you want to see? Is it imagery, building footprints for the state of Arizona, LIDAR, transportation? And we have a focus on, we're renewing our focus on authoritative data, because at first we had the problem of no one's sharing the data, let's get the data out there. And now we have the problem of there are, if we go back to the slideshow please, 6,000 items out there, and when I Google parcels, when I search for parcels, anything that has the word parcel anywhere in it, it returns 2,000 items. How do I know what to use? How do I know what's authoritative? How do I know the background? So we're focusing on that, but again, it is a site where people build apps, maps, share their data, and we get it across to the citizens of Arizona. And it's a free resource for people, but if they want to create, and requires no login, but if they want to create a login, they can join groups and share data. We have had counties work with cities within the state because they're working on a project together. They need to share the data only with each other, and they need one centralized system. Not all government ITs are easy to work with. Shh, don't tell anyone I told you. But, so a lot of people compliment this because it's a centralized, their GIS people know how to get data out in the centralized resource. We set the groups, they can communicate. So that is the background. I was talking to Becky and she was like, what do you want to get from this? And again, I want to start lines of communication so that we can move forward, getting more, better data, and communicating between different professions so that we can, again, reduce friction points and just, a lot of you gathered the data for us. So I want to find ways to get public and policymaker buy-in and funding so I can pay you guys to get more data to share with everyone in the state of Arizona. By the way, just a quick question. How many of you, and you can answer yes to multiple, how many of you consider yourself geospatial professionals? Okay. How many of you consider yourself engineers? Great. Surveyors? Hydrologists? Photogrammetrists? Am I missing anything major that would be here? Okay. So, and we all work with those as well as developers and planners. So that's my hope. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I have, these are our panelists, Paul, Brian, Becky, please come on up. When I came to Phil, and he introduced me to Renee, and I said, this is my passion project. This is, whether or not they tell me to do it, this is what I'm doing while I'm Deputy State Cartographer. He mentioned the possibility of this panel, and this team would be fantastic to help provide answers, as well as hearing from you guys. Are we recording this? Great. Okay, we're hoping, Cindy set it up so that this could be recorded so that I can just take copious notes from that. But in the meantime, I'll just be writing like mad. So just really quickly, let's just go down the line, introduce yourselves really quickly, and then we'll go to the questions.
Well, thank you. My name is Paul Bader. I'm the president of GPI Geospatial, but what I'm here to talk about is my role with North Carolina, specifically chairing the statewide mapping advisory committee in the state. And I've been doing it for the last 8 years. North Carolina gained an A+ rating from NISGIC for our geospatial data and how we coordinate with different agencies. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Becky Schneider. I oversee the federal aerial programs at SAM, or Surveying and Mapping. While I think that is very prudent to what we're going to be talking about today in those national data sets, what I actually bring to this that's slightly outside of this realm is that prior to my time at SAM, I oversaw the Geospatial Data Act compliance program at the Department of State. So obviously that's at a federal level, not the state level, and being able to coordinate the 11 different covered bureaus, all of which of course had very different funding sources and expectations. So excited to talk about how we can apply some of those lessons learned in the state of Arizona.
And my name is Brian Hadley. I am Geospatial Program Director with Wolpert. I've been there about 8 or 9 months now. Prior to that, probably some of you know me from my time at the USGS. I was the elevation data acquisition lead for the 3D elevation program. Did that for a number of years, and a big part of that was coordinating the partnerships that were necessary in order to fund what was over 70% of the dollars coming from the partners besides the USGS. So a lot of experience on building those partnerships that I think is important to the model that Shea is looking to employ here in Arizona.
Great, thank you. Oh, so if you could forward the slide one more time, sorry. So I have, I think I have 10 questions broken up over 4 slides. If I'm missing a question, tell me that I'm missing the question, please. But these are the questions I'm going to be asking the group and you guys. This kind of focuses on foundational data sets. And even if I'm way off base by even having this presentation here, I'd love to hear that as well. So why don't we just get going? What foundational geospatial, and panel, please feel free to say same answer. I have been on panels where everyone reiterates this previous person's, and that's fun. So, what foundational geospatial data sets form the backbone of your organization's work or entities that you work with? I had been assuming maybe it'd be like an AEC company up here. So, from the groups you work with, why don't we start with Paul?
So I'm going to take it to the state side. Under the statewide Mapping Advisory Committee in North Carolina, that the entity that I chair, or the committee that I chair, we have the LIDAR, statewide LIDAR ortho program, a statewide LIDAR, and the statewide ortho program, parcels information, boundary, this is state boundary, county boundaries. There are a lot of disputes within that organization. And then addressing, 911, and hydrography.
I think the only ones that I will add on the federal level are the national map, NAPE imagery, and then utility, public utility information, telecom, electric, water, wastewater, natural gas.
Hang on, sorry. I mentioned notes, and this is all about me learning. One, Paul, when you say 911, but you mentioned addressing separately, so are you talking about the roads?
Both roads and addresses. So for the 911 system, just to give you an example, we discovered last year that we were missing about 1.5 million building updates. And then so we had to find ways to compile these building outlines to feed them to the 911 system. And then the ortho program got involved and said, okay, let's do machine learning to capture a lot of the building footprints and then upload them to the 911 system. So it's just a coordination efforts between different data sets and different folks chairing.
And Becky, when you said public utility, do you know some sort of secret where you can get utility information out of people?
That is a great question. A lot of it is going to come from private connections, which I think is something we're going to talk about later, and being able to work with other companies and seeing what private collects are willing to share and private companies are willing to share, especially when it is sometimes proprietary information. Connections to, obviously throughout the state, when you talk about water departments or utility departments, telecom that is updated, a lot of it is going to have to be consolidated over many different sources instead of one already existing authoritative data set.
Great. I would love to talk to people about the fact that usually, even outside of consolidation, no one will share utility information. So, which I totally understand. So if that's something that people need as a core foundational data set, how can we work together? Yes, sir? Oh. Right. Okay, but that's good to, again, that's what I've run into in Arizona. But yes, there might be ways to, maybe there's open data and then there's shared with government. That's something we've done. And then Brian, back to the question.
I think a couple that I would add, Shay, how about demographic data? I had dinner last night with a gentleman that was talking about his company collects all kind of demographic data about individual parcels, the businesses there, how many employees, what type of revenue. It was an interesting conversation, but I think there's a lot of valuable economic data there. That, and I think one that's particularly important for your state is hydrography. So, obviously water is scarce. Where I am in Colorado, it is unbelievably dry this year. It's concerning for what water resources are going to be like in other places in the West. So I think that's a plug for that one as well.
And on that note, another thing I'd like to gain from y'all is I asked, why doesn't Arizona seem to participate in the USGS hydrography program very much? And a friend told me, so hearsay on hearsay, that her best guess was this. She can't seem to get any buy-in because we don't have an overabundance of water and everyone does hydrography for flooding. We're more worried about where we're going to get our water from. I don't think you should tell Globe that flooding isn't a problem considering the amount of flooding we just had, but another thing are use cases. If some people at certain entities think of hydrography only as flooding and we're in Arizona and it's not a problem, but you guys know that the municipal planners need it because they're doing development and they need to redo their floodplain, we need to know that so that we can talk about why it's important. So thank you for bringing that one up. So if you had, and I think I'll go down this slide through these guys and then ask all of you to chime in if you have answers to any of them. So if you had to prioritize your data sets based on the work that you do or that your clients do, Ryan, what would you prioritize if you could only prioritize a couple or a few?
I think I'd probably go back to the hydrography again. I grew up in the West. I've always thought that, Mike and I talked about this last night. The water the cost of it is not representative for how valuable it is. And so I just think all the development that you've seen in your state over the last couple of decades, I think you need to know where does your water come from, how does it flow, how much of it do you have, and how are you going to manage what's an incredibly precious resource. That's the one that comes to mind for me.
Perfect. Becky?
I would give a different answer if I was talking about my home state, but given we're in Arizona, I'm going to echo Brian's answer. Brian and I were actually just talking about this a little bit ago in the reevaluation of the core stations in Arizona over the past couple of years. And in some places, due to the groundwater usage, I mean, we're talking about like a 19-foot drop of elevation in some places here, which is going to have a huge impact. Obviously, that sounds very drastic. It's not, that's not consistent across the entire state. But when you look at a key resource and set of information to make decisions across, public safety and environmental and land development, land use, I think that's going to be a crucial one to be able to monitor closely over the coming years in this state.
Great call.
I'm going to go back to North Carolina as far as the crucial data sets, and that would be LIDAR and orthos. I think that came very evident to us with Hurricane Helene hitting the state, western North Carolina, and we saw firsthand how even the ortho program helped first responders get to the people that need to be rescued. And then on the ortho program, the damage from landslides to waterways and to structures destroyed, that was all in the LIDAR data set, and that helped the state respond more proactively to the people that needed to be rescued.
Great. How many people in the audience feel that maintaining the core stations wherever they live would count as a priority data set? Okay. To me, core stations, I'm glad you brought them up. They are the unsung hero, and I know in Arizona, they were maintained pretty well, and then they definitely were not maintained very well due to all of us have a lot of stuff to do and not always given the money to do our mandates. So, and then our Arizona Department of Water Resources took over, and they have built an amazing set of stations. But again, it's one of those, I was mentioning this particular topic at, I believe it was a data committee, and someone said to me, well, since the federal government is pulling down all their data, could you just share that with me now? And he happened to be from a private organization, and I've happened to know him for a while, and if we were in public, I would have happened to slap him. It's just, we love it, we use it. Some of these things we count on the government to get to us. And then when they're not there, I thought, couldn't you have taken this and gone up in arms and mentioned to the federal government that you need these resources back instead of just going to the state, which is less funded, and saying, well, could you take over their job? Like, I don't think that's the fix that's going to have us moving forward. But op-ed. Okay, what are the biggest challenges you face in gaining access to the data sets we've discussed? And in this, let me tell two quick stories. One, I was talking to Renee about all of this, and she mentioned that I am a lifelong government employee GIS person. So, wow, like, we can have therapy for me later. But, so that being said, Renee said this in all kindness. She's like, when we get RFPs to gather LiDAR or gather imagery, we can tell whether it was written by engineers and or photogrammetrists versus a bunch of GIS people. What? So, for instance, as it turns out, maybe educating the people writing the RFPs on how to write a good RFP that actually makes sense and would let us ask for the products we need. That could be a challenge. I was trying to get SRP on board for imagery. For $800,000, the state of Arizona could have bought up from 60 centimeter to 30 centimeter nape imagery. That's a drop in the bucket. Unfortunately, it came last spring when we found out, and all of our state agencies who get money from the feds had their money cut off, and all of the counties who had promised they would help saw that their grants were drying up, so they couldn't do it. So we couldn't get a drop in the bucket to get up to 1 foot imagery. So I would go to places, I'm like, I know you get imagery. And I found out challenges like for our study areas, it just seems there's always a seam in the imagery. So that's why we won't buy into these things. Well, if I don't know those are challenges keeping people from buying into these programs, then I can't try to come up with solutions so that we can all work. So whatever the type of challenge, technical, political, whatever it is, what are some challenges you've run into in getting these data sets available, Paul?
So I do want to go back to, you mentioned the Geographic Information Council in the state of Arizona. I want to add one more word to it. We call it GICC, Geographic Information Coordinating Council. And that is huge, coordinating. And that's what my job is, to coordinate between the different agencies. We meet quarterly, and I don't work for a government agency, but we have all of the government agencies in the meeting, and then they're all participating, and then my job is to connect dots between agencies. This agency wants this data set, this agency has it, why don't you talk together, disseminate the data, get what you need, and I don't hurt anybody's feelings, I just, connect dots. And I don't have any skin in the game either, so they listen to me. So the GICC, we have many committees, and I'll just want to list them real quickly for you. LGC, which stands for Local Government Committee. SCUG, which is the State Government GIS Users Committee. And then this is the agency that gets all of the GIS information from the different counties to submit to the Secretary of State's office, who keeps the records on all of these parcels. And then the FIC, which is the Federal Interagency Committee, and these are the federal liaisons. We have USGS, we have NOAA, we have different agencies that supply the state with data sets on the federal government side. And then the TAC, which is the Technical Advisory Committee. This committee is tasked with devising technical approaches to data sets. They write the rules. And then the SMAC, which is what I chair, which is the Statewide Mapping Advisory Committee. So the challenge is finding somebody to connect the dots between all of these agencies who are operating independently. And then that directive comes from the governor himself. I was appointed by the governor. I didn't meet him, but they appointed me, and I've been serving in that role. So you got to separate yourself from the agencies, and then get somebody to say, "This, you do this, and you do that," and I think it works well.
Perfect. Becky?
I think I'll echo a lot of that, Paul, because the way that the GDA compliance reporting ended up happening at the Department of State was very similar. The governing bureau, it was 11 covered bureaus that had geospatial data and buy-in and needed to report up to OIG. They chose, the governing bureau was the Office of the Geographer, which actually, with all due respect to Lee Schwartz, was probably the least technical geospatial group, which ended up being a bonus because there was very much like a kind of exactly what you were saying. There was a certain level of removal from the procedures, from the enterprise and everything that was being governed. This was obviously a national directive coming from the executive branch, so similar to the governor, it was a mandate that needed to come down. That didn't make it any less challenging because, again, every bureau had their own funding pool. They had different folks within Congress that they needed to report to for the annual budget, which made it a challenge. But having that consolidated working group, coordinated effort where there was way more knowledge sharing than there had been previously was really helpful. I think we've all pretty much touched on understanding and awareness issues and sharing and consolidating all of this data. This is kind of tangential and maybe hasn't come up so much, but I think a big challenge that we're all anticipating seeing is going to be from the datum shift that's upcoming and making sure that that's really effectively coordinated across bureaus, across state agencies. So I don't know if anyone here has a really good answer to that or how you're preparing for it, but I think I personally see that being a big challenge coming up in the coming years.
In your meetings, I assume they were just other Fed agencies? Like, was there any way to integrate private groups with the discussion?
There were contractors involved, but it wasn't necessarily from an outside source. It was more of like an FTE buy-in. It was, there were authoritative entities from all of the governing bureaus, and then all of their geospatial managers and line leads and everything. There wasn't necessarily public buy-in, at least for us at that point, but it sounds like, Paul, you might have had some in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, we do. And you just mentioned, the federal agencies. I think the folks that you saw yesterday and today from the federal agencies, we see them on our committees giving us reports, and so we're definitely in touch with that. But you mentioned something very important about the datum change and how much it's going to affect data sets. And so at the state level now, we have a monthly meeting to talk about the datum change. And then similar, we have all of these agencies attending these meetings. For example, depending on what your state is, the sheet layout or the grid, ours is changing drastically. The sheet names, numbers are easting, northing this, and second digit, and so on. And so now you have a complete shift in the way we, index the state. And then so now who's going to be affected and who's going to be in charge of forming a new one, and who's going to inform, the surveyors, and same thing with the, the 911 data sets that they have. It's now shifted. Who is updating that? So there's a lot to be discussed when it comes to datum changes. And you mentioned, Arizona's shift, whether it's horizontal or vertical, same thing in any state. 4 meters now is, elevation change from one state, from one side of the state to the next. So all of these are going to make a huge difference, and they need to be planned out ahead of time.
Brian, back to the challenges facing with,
You know what, in the spirit of keeping moving on, what was it that we could say? Pass or?
Yes. Okay,
Let's,
so I'll be dying after this fourth question. There have to be other challenges, people. But, I mean, I know coordination's a huge one, but, so I'll be curious what the audience says. So, are there strong examples of success that you've seen, states, feds, counties, whatever it is, in finding and developing foundational data sets and sharing those? Brian?
I think this one's easy for me to answer from my perspective from 3DAP and 3DHP. You think of a handful of states, Tennessee comes to mind, Washington, Kentucky, California, Minnesota, states that developed a LiDAR plan in coordination with the counties, local government agencies, determined what their requirements were, how they were going to come up with the funding, a timeline, acquisition strategies, and then the partnership goals to work with the federal government to help offset some of the costs. I think they're all tremendous examples of the success of if you start with a plan and all contributions matter. I think where we are right now, handful of years back, Pima County regional governments they got quite a few partners to throw money in, and sometimes it's small amounts, but it all adds towards a common goal. But I think having the plan in place so that you have an idea of what the end goal is critically important to the success.
I agree. I'm going to throw out there another challenge I've run into is the haves and the have-nots. We have two most populated counties with a very large tax base, and they do their own imagery programs, which is great. But then when I ask them to chip in for the state, why would they chip in for the state when they have better imagery through their existing program? So a kind of odd challenge is getting the successes to help in areas outside of their particular areas. But back to examples of successes. Becky.
Yeah, Texas is specifically called out here, and I'll expand on that a little bit.
That's because of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So we have done work with the state of Texas, and I'll kind of go off of what Brian was saying, and I think what Texas has done really well is having the state contract be very well administered, the DIR contract, and it's very well consolidated. There's a lot of great communication throughout the state for the type of work and the types of contracts that are brought to the vehicle. The Water Development Board that they're running and their ability to, I think efficiency has been a big thing recently, their ability to take all of the different public water information that has been put together across the state, and they built I think it's called the Water Data Hub that came out at some point last year. That's a fantastic resource that was kind of just essentially it's a REST service for bringing together all of the other dashboards and sites and everything that have been put together. So I think Texas is a great example of a state that has done it really well. And I bet we're about to hear how North Carolina has done it really well too.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think the one word that comes to mind is uniformity of contracting and developing guidelines and accuracy decisions. And so when the state, awards contracts, let's say for orthos, you have to go by the guidelines of the state. And so all of these contractors are now sharing information with each other, and they're tying to each other and so on. Everybody's following the same, rules about histograms and flight windows. And so it's that uniformity that makes a huge difference in data sets. And then having updating, data on a regular basis. I mean, we all know orthos with states that are growing fast. You got to do them annually, otherwise you're going to be left behind. And then, but these are examples of, for economic reasons, and obviously state, growth is a direct correlation between for these data sets. But you can, the orthos, for example, the hydrography program that you mentioned, when you're collecting large data sets, the hydrography group using these latest and greatest and updating their data sets. And so those are, I think, great, strong examples that I can think of.
Great, thank you. Before we go to the next set of slides, Mike or someone, does anyone gentlemen, anyone in the audience have any comments or anything they want to say about any of the 4 bullet points we've just discussed before we go to the next 4? Great. You guys are learning so much like me that you don't even have anything to add. That's what I'm going to take away from the total silence. All right, next slide, please. All right, who else should be a part of this conversation to help advance the work? And I especially want to include entities that utilize these data sets. Paul?
I would say the big challenge here is to get all of these government agencies to talk to each other. That is, I think what I learned is the biggest challenge. So I think on the state level, for example, in our case, we have what we call the North Carolina ARC Users Group, and then this professional GIS users meet biannually at a conference, and then the state sponsors this conference and then gets people to talk to each other and present what they're doing in their counties or in their localities, and that always helps advance the knowledge. And then we go around and as emissaries of this data, telling folks, even going to high schools, telling them how great this GIS data is. You're not only promoting the profession, but you're also promoting the data sets for people to use. And then we use, carrot and stick type of method to get what we need. For example, the state is waiting on this county for 2 years now to send us their GIS parcel information. Well, yeah, we're not going to send you orthos unless you send us your parcel information. And then so that sort of helps also.
Thank you. Becky?
I don't think I have many original thoughts to share on this one. I think we all know who the right stakeholders to involve are. I mean, the GIOs, the state councils, the DOTs, environmental agencies, public safety and emergency management are obviously a big one because that's where a lot of funding is going to come from. Academia and regional planning, whenever that's relevant and available, and then the private sector. I think especially in Arizona, I think you have all the right people involved already. It's just the collaboration and routine sharing of all of the information and getting on the same page that's probably the bigger challenge than identifying new people to involve.
So when you say the private sector, I don't know if you guys realize this, but you're huge. Like, I can identify, the first set I was like, yep, I know who to talk to there. I know who to talk to there. What do you mean when you say the private sector? CEOs, the engineers that work for them? Like, what does that mean, the private sector?
So I'll start, and then I'm curious what Paul and Brian want to say on this too, but a plug for MAPPS. I think this is a really good place to start. Obviously, there's a wide representation, at least within this group, within other lobbying groups and industry partners within the remote sensing industry and the geospatial industry. I don't think it always needs to be a CEO. I think it needs to be the person with the best connections in your localities and municipalities and the state agencies that you need to be talking to. There are a lot of folks in this room that are very well connected within their respective states, within their respective like federal customers. MAPPS Federal is obviously going to be a big part of that, and talking to state legislators from Arizona and from other states where funding has been a struggle. So start with the group in this room, I think, instead of a title that I would suggest across the board.
Perfect. Thank you. Brian?
I don't have too much to add there. When I think of Arizona, Shay, how about APS? And are they a user of some of these data sets? I mean, yeah, I certainly think power companies are one that would be interested. It's hard to know exactly how to attack that, but I think we see it a lot. I mean, we see folks, private industry approach us about data needs. Most of the time, it feels like they check for publicly available sources first, something in the public domain. If it's not available, then willing to purchase it. But I would think just about anybody would like to cost share. So I think there is opportunities there. Identifying them, I think Becky made some good points on how you go about doing that.
We're down to 10 minutes. Do you have any amazing or unamazing ideas on ways to engage partners?
In my opinion, a lot of this stuff really sells itself. I think almost everybody in this room believes that the value of the goods and the services in the geospatial world, surveying, imagery, LiDAR, all things that we do here are of a high degree of value. And I think you know from your own experience how many of these fundamentally framework data sets are meaningful and valuable to people who need to use them. So to me, it's the messaging. It's using opportunities to get out. Different organizations, Becky listed them off on the last question: academics, local government, state government, federal government. Make a plan for what data sets you need. And I think once the plan is in place, people are much more likely to engage and want to participate in partnering. It becomes something that's feasible, that actually has an actionable track that you can take. And so I do believe that these things can start at a very small and build into a large groundswell. So I think that's part of it.
Great. So noting down Brian on the committee that talks to people, gets money. Becky?
I loved Brian's answer. I don't think I have too much to add, just that once the group is together and the plan is in place, I think having it be as stakeholder-led as possible is really crucial, because policy dictates direction, but collaboration dictates actual outcomes. If you just come down, in Arizona, but in any state at any agency, if you just come down and say, this is the way we're doing it, get on board or get out, they're gonna get out pretty quickly, and you're gonna be fighting an uphill battle the whole way. So I would just say, let your stakeholders, especially the funding ones, get them as involved as possible in the procedures and processes.
Paul, anything new to add?
The only thing I would add is a lot of some of these agencies, I wouldn't say a lot of some of these agencies, they don't know the value of the data sets. I think demonstrating the value to the stakeholders, real examples how economic progress and advancement can be realized by procuring some of these data sets. I think it opens people's eyes. I mean, can you imagine 911? Okay, so I got a call from 911 and I'm driving and then I get to the location and there is no house because it is not showing me where I'm at. You just wasted 5 minutes of somebody's life or death. So that's real demonstration of, I give people examples, hurricanes, and so on. But one quick example, this was a, same thing with 911. A call gets in on the eastern side of North Carolina. There's a flood warning, and then this lady the dispatcher answers the call from an older lady, and this was recorded. and then, ma'am, I see you're calling from such and such location. I see that your house is 3 stories. My flood model tells me that, you know, your basement is going to be flooded in the next 30 minutes. Do you know where the breakers are for the power? I mean, this is like real stuff. That's geospatial data. That's LiDAR. That's footprints. That's addressing. So all of this is just crucial information for the state citizens to have. And I think these type of examples are effective to get people to notice what we're trying to do.
Paul, is there anything government agencies could be doing differently to make the collaboration easier or more effective, keeping it kind of short?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to the communications. I mean, the foundation is just these agencies communicating with each other, putting them all in one room and then giving them a platform and then connecting dots between them. I think that's probably the most effective way to do it.
Thank you. Becky?
I would say once there's any kind of a geospatial policy or framework at the state level or the federal level, that it's actually enforced. I think that's a problem I saw a lot at the Department of State, was that there were OIG policies that were passed down through the GDA, and they were kind of just announced, and then there really wasn't any plan or follow-up on how to enact any of them or who was going to be responsible for reporting. So like a clear structure of who is responsible and accountable for whatever tasks are coming out for funding or for mapping or whatever.
Thank you. Brian?
I think we've covered the coordination part pretty well. Maybe I'll say some flexibility. How about thinking about something like the NAPE program, and our friends at the USDA don't necessarily do a lot of coordination outside of their own internal group there. Could they look potentially at a partnership program similar to like what 3DEP does? Get some funding from folks that are interested in buy-ups or more frequent acquisitions. So I do think the government, particularly at the federal level, they are somewhat stovepiped. It is the way that they function. So some better flexibility and communication to look maybe there's ways that dollars could be spent more efficiently and engage more folks in the cost share process.
Love it. So when we were going over this, the panel said, well, what do you think government needs from private sector to move forward? I think, because I've been in this job for like 18 months, so I am an expert. But I think, and I was at GeoBiz last week, and they had about 8 GIOs there, as well as a huge amount of private industry. And even there, the agreement was government, we're not the best at selling our success stories. If we were really good salespeople, chances are we wouldn't be working our government jobs, to be honest. So from the private industry, that's why we need you guys. You're talking to the people that we also should be talking to, so telling us who we should be speaking with, handing us those success stories so that we can say, until I started working with Phil, I didn't realize within the city how many public works, along with planning, along with the other groups, how many people utilize that LiDAR and hydrography data, and that is a succinct, wrapped up success story that I can push up a chain that has not been something that it's just not my wheelhouse. So getting that from private industry would be very valuable. Could we go one more slide, please? There are 2 more questions, and the last one is very open-ended, which is, it's next steps, and then did we miss anything? So, panel, we have 3 minutes left. In 30 seconds or less, can you tell me next steps and if we missed anything, so that if the audience has anything to add, they have a moment? Right?
I'm going to defer to the audience.
Great. Becky?
Same.
Paul?
Yeah,
Come
let's
on.
hear from the audience. That's good.
Great. Come on, audience. Mark, thank you.
Well, I think, hello? Okay. One of the things that I think we didn't talk about at all was getting legislation changed at the state level to include mandates for some of these data sets and the political changes that are needed to do that. And here we are, MAPPS, and we do it at the federal level, but it looks like that's something that we could help out at the state level as well. And especially maybe, Paul, even in North Carolina, the LIDAR program, it actually comes out of the public safety group, right, for the reasons you're talking about. So that's a big area that we probably could focus on.
Thank you. That's a great point. To speak to that, I know the 911 admin for Arizona, and Arizona is definitely the tail end of the amount of fees that go to support 911. So a lot of states will be like, oh, 911 will get you the imagery and 911 will do this, because in other states they're a large money generator and these data layers are imperative to them, but that's not currently how it is in Arizona. But after talking to you guys, I'm pretty sure by next year we'll be flushing 911 money. Are there any other comments? Yes, sir, in the black up here. And then I am not holding up lunch, so I'll be around this afternoon if you want to chat more.
Thank you, Shay and the panel. One thing that I've seen here locally is Pima County has a regional transportation authority where they have representatives from every entity or municipality in the county that decide where funding goes and what road projects get built. And so they specialize above and beyond what ADOT does to address the local needs of the Pima County community. With that, they also get a funding source of a sales tax to support that. And that sales tax is 2/3 of their budget, and state and federal is only another third of it. So I think if you consider the GIS as more of a utility than a service, and you have partners from the various entities within the state that are on kind of a board of that utility, that possibly opens up some other funding avenues and also kind of standardizes across the state what things are done, how data sets are managed, and also allows people a little bit more broader or a forum in which to collaborate more effectively.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, panelists. I really appreciate this. Thank you, Renee and Phil, for helping us put it together. And thank you all for your time. This is...
Just 1 second. I wanted to say thank you, Shay, for coming. And then you board members did a great job. So we're giving you guys a MAPPS gift as well. I learned a lot. Hopefully other people did. Thank you.
Okay, we're good to break for lunch in this next room. Couple of announcements, just real quick. I had failed to mention earlier, Kuchera had sponsored Jim Nagel's talk on the FAR procurement, so thank you to Kuchera. And we'll be back in here in about an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you.